This video tour of the project we did for First United Methodist Church in Celina. Celina is one of the fastest growing regions of North Texas, and no doubt one of the fastest growing in the country. Just amazing growth out there. This was the original building of First United Methodist Church Celina. They had this historic sanctuary building. A lot of these were built in this fashion with a half basement. So you can see this, the number of steps going up, very difficult to make this ADA accessible. And then over here, they had built a Kirk Hall, which was kind of a fellowship hall, and a few classrooms and modern restrooms. This old sanctuary was really quite amazing. It had a wraparound horseshoe balcony, and but this church was really locked in. There was nowhere to expand, very difficult for an aging population, and no traffic coming through. So they were ready to make a move. They bought 20 acres out on 12465. FM 428 is out on the bypass, much more traffic. So we'll flip over there now. And they hired us to master plan them. And their goal was to be authentic to the day, but to look like the buildings had been there for 100 years. Now, what's tricky about that is that look is very expensive. And so how did we get them out there, transferred out there, relocated out there in a buildable phase one that was affordable? And that became one of the big challenges. So here you see that they opted to go with a campus plan. We don't do that a lot. We find that a lot of Texas women, once they get their jacket off and their hair fixed, don't like to go back out in the breeze. But they said, no, we're out there. We're in the beautiful open country. Let's explore a campus approach with multiple buildings. And I think it was a great call for them. So you see here in the foreground, this is their phase one building. And then eventually over here on the left, their master plan sanctuary and their master plan fellowship hall. And so it builds very nicely. And then they've got some youth and some children's buildings back here in the back. First Methodist Celina has a very successful preschool, and it's really a pillar in the community. So we began to develop this approach and plan and layout. And as it progressed, the church just really got excited. We'll move through from the ground. You can see the master plan sanctuary is very heavy with ornate. This is a Texas prairie Gothic shaping. It's very authentic to North Texas, to Central Texas. It's a great prairie look, and yet it has its forms that shape back into the middle 1400s of Europe with the Gothic shaping. And we're certainly a firm that can speak that for the churches it's appropriate for. Many churches not appropriate. They would not be interested in this look at all, but it's extremely appropriate for this congregation. Over here on the right, you see phase one. You see it much simpler, smaller scale, but yet the way it ties in very beautifully. These are our original renderings. And then you'll see as we progress how this moved along to the actual building, and it held its form pretty well. Another view there, you can see there's a colonnade going down the side. There's some really exciting entries and connection points. And we're very big on the way you enter a building, the way a building reaches out to receive you. And this building is, of course, got a lot of entry back and forth across this campus design. Here we are looking more down the side of the phase one building. We see some clear story windows that you'll notice got eliminated for budget. Sometimes that's the case, but some very strong pilasters. That's a half column that's worked into a wall. This tower element, very strong imagery. And then a very interesting entry back here. And we'll see that a little bit better in a moment, but we wanted the building to express very clearly what's going on inside. And so there's a little bit of a modern element, and this is kind of the cracker between two fine wines to kind of divide these two buildings up. Here we are back at the youth building, and the youth building begins to use the same materials, but to take on a much different look. It didn't need to be that heavy. It didn't need to look like a cathedral. It wouldn't even have been honest. So there's a very honest but contextual youth building, and we're hoping that they'll get to build that. One window feature that we love to use are these high windows tucked underneath the roof. It really lets in a beautiful interior light. Of course, you can imagine walking through this entry. It's just grand inside, really beautiful space. And here's their preschool wing with an eventual playground and complete wraparound with security. Just a great wing that we completely designed in the master plan. The youth building, again, that was actually a children's building before. This is the youth building. You can see a plaza with a fountain and really some nice campus attributes. And this is actually another version of the youth building. This was a little bit later and has some very interesting kind of a gathering space for the youth inside this cylinder where there's seats all the way around the walls going up. And so you can see this concept getting stronger and stronger as we develop that concept. Here we are back around the other side of the master plan sanctuary and the fellowship hall, and it is just regal. That's a very, very heavily adorned sanctuary building, and no question begins to fulfill the mandate that we have been there for 100 years. So we'll move on through, and here's a quick aerial of the completed phase 1, but let's jump out of that and I'll take you to the interior. So after master planning, we get deeper into phase 1, and this is the phase 1 building now as we begin to look at just it. This is all we're going to build in phase 1, and you can see that there's a much greater level of detail, and this is much closer to what they eventually built. We're beginning to get pricing feedback from Helen Wilkinson, who was with us on this entire journey, and we're beginning to really hone in on what this congregation can afford to build in phase 1, which of course is so important. Here's that entry, and you'll see that actually develops over time as we continue to develop the concept. And then the back, this is the preschool entry. So a dedicated entry for the church offices to the left and the preschool to the right. And then, of course, the phase 1 play area. And this is a beautiful play area, as it turned out. It's just so well done. Since synthetic materials, handicap accessible, nicely protected, very secure, and yet open, shaded. It's just a very, very nice space. So now we jump into the phase 1 sanctuary, and you see that there's a lot going on. There's a lot of theatrical lighting. I don't personally love that. We've got some chandelier fixtures here, and then of course the Gothic styling and the light coming in. Very nice buttressing inside, but done out of gypboard to make this as affordable as possible because we needed to get every seat we possibly could. This church was experiencing growth, and they knew when they moved out here it was going to be explosive. And so we really needed to squeeze the seats and yet get them started so that they would begin to set in motion their identity in this community. Very, very important. Here we are looking to the back of the sanctuary. We see some acoustic paneling back there to help with sound, and very clean look. They've got a lot of lighting options. You see some of these sconces that throw a large amount of light on the ceiling, so this space really opens up. We'd love to light up to a bright white ceiling and just really lift the roof off. And this space feels very tall. It's very triumphant inside. Of course, they went with a just very nice traditional pew. I mean, this is very stately Texas Gothic chapel all the way. Here's their narthex, and this is actually an entry space, but we're going to see as we go through these doors on the left that they have a very large grand mall, and the entire phase 1 is organized around this grand mall. You basically come out of every room and you immediately know where you are because the grand mall is the big gathering element. It connects the entries and really, really lets you go through. But the church realized that they needed an actual narthex here. So this is a little undersized, but it's really just a pass-through space and gives you kind of a seal between the noisier grand mall and the sanctuary. Here you see the men's restroom, and the women's restroom is on the other side. So we've got really nice restrooms nestled right there as we head down into that grand mall. Here's the restrooms, very ample, very nice. This church knew that restrooms were very important and went for it. And this is just a beautiful space. Here's their combination. This space has to do a lot of things, but this is actually a bride's room. You see some nice mirrors there on the left. You see some nice furniture, but they also use this for a bit of counseling, and it provides a number of functions for them. And here we are with their kitchen. They'll get a bigger kitchen as they move on and progress, but this is a very functional kitchen, very economically laid out, nice island in the middle. This lower height is handicap access, mandated by the Texas accessibility standards, and then the higher countertop there for working at a greater height. These are down in the preschool rooms, and they have some really beautiful preschool rooms they use both for church use and for weekday use. There we see that some of these rooms exit right onto the playground. Very, very efficient to take a class out, take a class back. They've got students there long hours during the day. And then this is their entry into the administrative wing. This is a private doorway that takes you back into the administrative offices so that they don't have doors that open up just onto the hallway. It gives the pastors the ability to write a sermon, to counsel, and be a little bit tucked away from a church that has a lot of hustle and bustle. You see kind of the waiting area provides one of the living room areas of the church. A really nice configuration. And we come back around to the outside, and you can see this is the way phase 1 shaped up. If you remember the renderings, it's just about on track. We went on and built it just like we designed it. And this building has gotten a lot of rave reviews. It's not right for a lot of churches, but it was just right for this church. Here we are from the side. They have since come in and put a Methodist flame here above this entry, and it just tied the whole thing together. It's really quite beautiful. And the long view as we look down the way, this entry here into the offices in the preschool, and then a dedicated preschool right into the entry there. And the preschool director has direct visual access, so they have a high level of control with this preschool ring. Very secure. And the phase 1 play area, again with the all surface rollable fall zone. This is a very high quality space. You've got a play area over here and a play area here as well. And that's going to just about do it. It's going to take us to the last slide, which is going to be the grand mall. You notice that we took the windows out of the existing sanctuary and brought those over. A lot of history. These are backlit LED. They look absolutely beautiful in the space. And when this is full of people, it's just a great space. We really believe that there are less and less reasons to get out of bed to go to church. You can probably get better preaching. You can probably get better worship. You could probably get better theology. But the one thing you can't get is that hug and that sense of community. And who's going to be there when you're marrying, when you're burying, when you're sick, when you're hurting, when you're rejoicing? Who's going to be your tribe that makes the walk of life with you? And it's these type spaces that really allow you to get to know the members of the church, really hang out a little longer, and really enjoy that fellowship. So we think that's just a really important space. So that's going to conclude the tour here, First Methodist Church Celina. If you've enjoyed anything on that, I'd love to hear your comments. And if you're looking for some help with layout and some design issues, be sure to give us a call. Thank you.